Jesus said to him, "What is it you want me to do for you?" He replied, "Master, I want to see." When I was in middle school and early high school, it's when around the period of time I began to really start thinking seriously about all this kind of religious-y stuff. The deeper things of life. And around that time I began to think that Catholicism was sort of an old, obsolete form of Christianity, stuck in its old traditional rituals and traditions, and kind of out of touch. Not really touching on the deep stuff of life, especially what young people were asking and wrestling with. And part of that had to do with my experience of growing up in a very, very small Catholic church where most of my friends around my age who took their faith very seriously belonged to other churches. Many of them were members of a church called the Church of the Living Word and had a very large youth group, and I started going there and being involved there, even though I was going to Mass on Sundays. And this Church of the Living Word, by the way, some of my mean, more secular classmates would sometimes refer to it as the Church of Living Weird. But that's probably maybe why I liked going there, because then I wasn't so weird going there. There were people there weirder than me, so there you go. But when I got to college, of course, started learning ever more about the world, and really asking this question in college of what am I supposed to do with my life? And the deeper thing behind that is, well, what does it mean to live well? How do I live well? Not just what's the next thing to do, but essentially, how do I live goodness? How do I be a force of good in the world and not merely a perpetuator of misery and evil? And while that time I was wrestling with that question in college, I also began to then learn more about my Catholic faith, about Catholicism. And that meant I started to learn more deeply about the moral teachings of the Church. What does the Church say, this Catholic Church? What does it say about what it means to be good? And at face value, the Catholic Church would teach some things on a moral level that initially there was a part of me that sort of balked at. I was like, some things I'm like, that makes sense, but other things I'm like, I'm not sure that I agree with that. Not sure that I like that. But the more I delved into those questions, the more I began to realize how deeply thought out the Catholic teaching was. I began to realize that in what the Church teaches, that it's not just a list of do's and don'ts, but everything that is taught is from a deep collection, a deep dive of reflection and a collection of wisdom throughout the ages of really looking deeply into what is the human heart. What does it mean to be human? And with that, the deep wrestling of the questions of who is God and what does that mean for my life? I mentioned a couple of weeks ago that sometimes our temptation as human beings is to think, how is it I want to live? And therefore, who am I? And therefore, how do I fit God and religion into that? But the faith instinct, the biblical view, is the other way around. Who is God? And therefore, who am I? And therefore, what does it mean to live? And so what I began to realize in what the Church teaches, what Christ reveals to us in and through the Catholic Church, of this deeper way to live, that behind every teaching of the Church there was, or what at first seemed a no to something, was an invitation to a yes to something deeper. What initially sort of grated against my sensibilities, I realized was a deeper invitation to love, an invitation for part of my selfishness and the selfish inclinations of my own love to die ever more fully, so as to truly live. That I discovered here this rich and beautiful wisdom of what it means to be good, of what it means to be truly human, of how to live fully, and these deep questions of the human heart. This collection of wisdom about such questions. And not only just like theoretical moral quandaries, and not just what it means personally for me, but also this sense of also action and working and living in the world, especially care for the least and the poor among us. And the consistent teaching of care for the value of every single human life, the dignity of every human person from conception until natural death. But not only this question of goodness, but with this all integrated with this sense of beauty. Poetry, beauty, music, art, and literature, and the power of story, also things which I love. That in this faith, in this institution, in this weird thing that we call the church, I found this beautiful integration of poetry, of beauty, of care for the poor, of morality, of deep, profound thinking, and of practical living. And nowhere else have I found, in no other system, in no other institution, in no other group, have I found such a beautiful integration of all of these things. And I share this with you all because for me it was very much an experience, though not in an instant moment, but over a course of time, of my eyes being opened, much like the blind Bartimaeus. This seeking from the depths of my heart that didn't even know, this cry that I didn't even always have words to, of what is it, how I'm supposed to live? Lord, have mercy on me. Lord, have pity on me. Sort of analogously crying from the roadside, trying to figure out where it is I'm supposed to go. That Jesus, through his teachings, revealed to the church, opening the eyes and showing the way to go. But not just an intellectual understanding endeavor, but then very practically showing me how it is I'm supposed to live. Where do I go with my life? We see also in the story of the blind man today, blind Bartimaeus. I was struck by this idea that after Jesus opens his eyes, Jesus just tells him, go on your way. And there's a freedom in that. That you don't have to follow me. You are still free. But in that, then we see that he says, go on your way. And then it says that Bartimaeus then followed on the way of Christ. He followed Jesus on his way. That there's sort of in this moment of healing, of the eyes being opened, of this holistic healing, there's this harmony, this harmonizing of his will with the will of Christ. That this is the way I'm going to walk. And so too, to invite others to go on that way. And so for us, to allow Christ to ever more fully open our eyes to the richness, the beauty that is here in this, and the wisdom that is here. That in this church, that our Catholic faith isn't just the opinion of this person or that person, but a collection of wisdom in the school of the human heart. And I don't know about you, but that's the way I'm going to strive to walk. Even though I don't do it perfectly, though I still stumble along the way, even though I still am inclined to my selfish tendencies, it's the wisdom of this faith, though, that keeps pulling me back. The disciplines, the teachings of the church, the sacraments, the prayer, the word of the scriptures spoken to us, proclaimed through us, coming back to this again and again, that grates against my pride and my selfishness, and that keeps pulling me back on the way, lighting up again what is the way that we are to go. Opening again and again is a process, clearing our blindness to see the way. And so for us to go on that way and invite others to go on that way too. And even if no one listens, even if it seems no one listens, I should say, I've realized even the importance of being a part of this church, of being a link in the chain of passing on this wisdom for generations to come, that some may at least have their eyes be opened, to be shown the way, to come to know and see and experience and live this beauty that Christ came to give us. The beauty of this life, walking with Him on the way, with Him in and through His church. Jesus said to him, "What is it you want me to do for you?" And he replied, "Master, I want to see."